Hello and welcome to a very special episode of Palace Confidential, reflecting on the death of Queen Elizabeth II, who died yesterday at Balmoral at the age of 96. Joining me today is Kate Manzi, assistant editor of The Mail on Sunday, and the Daily Mail's diary editor, Richard Eden. Welcome both. But before I hear from our guests, here is a look at the life of the Queen in pictures. It's quite emotional, isn't it? Kate, I'm going to come to you first. It has been said before, over and over again, but it was an extraordinary life.
Well, looking at those pictures, you know, it's incredible, isn't it, what she achieved, and, you know, that smile throughout, and she just had that sense of magic, you know, and majesty. And there's nobody comparable. She's met more world leaders than anybody else, has seen more parts of the world than anybody else. And had just welcomed in her 15th Prime Minister 2 days before she died, which is extraordinary. And again, you know, that very last public appearance, we saw that smile that we've just seen on all those wonderful images there, the twinkly eyes, and just that sense of presence and life and optimism that she was there doing her duty right to the end. And nothing was going to stop her from doing that. Absolutely extraordinary.
How do you feel, Richard? Yesterday, you and I sort of helmed a very odd show where we didn't really know what was going on, and here we are 24 hours later.
It's been a hard couple of days, actually, to be honest. I mean, you know, because yesterday with all the health fears and then getting the announcement about 6 o'clock, I mean, slightly embarrassed to admit, like on the bus on the way home from work last night, I was crying, looking at all the tributes on Twitter, and there was a father talking to his young daughter about the death and everything. And it's been very, very moving. It's that sort of national outpouring of grief. And it's nice to be able to pay tribute in our own ways, and I hope we've been doing that in the paper, and everyone's working extremely hard to do that.
It's interesting because I think it does bring up a lot of emotion and grief for people that's possibly not related to the Queen when you think about your own family. But there was that quite powerful image of Harry, wasn't there, leaving Balmoral. And one has to wonder, many will be hoping that this is the event that brings that family back together. Do you think that's possible?
It would be nice to think that, for sort of sentimental reasons, and the idea of a death bringing people together again. But I have to say, I'm sorry, it's not, I know it's not really the thing people want to hear, but I don't think it will happen. In the sense that, just look at it, you know, Harry travelled alone. Prince William went up to Scotland with his uncles Edward, Andrew, and with his aunt Sophie, whereas Harry made his way alone with his security guards. He stayed at Balmoral. He got there, sadly, too late to see his grandmother before she died. And he was there, apparently, for 12 hours, 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. Then he's straight out. I mean, did he actually, even have breakfast with his brother? To be honest, I doubt it. And I think they are keeping him at arm's length. And who can blame them with the series of interviews they give and not knowing what's going to be repeated in interviews or on some new Netflix programme? It's understandable, isn't it?
It's the dreadful timing we always feared, isn't it, Kate?
Yes, I think it is. But in the aftermath of the Queen's death, it's nice to kind of concentrate on the highlights and the good points. Like Richard, I would like to think that this could be a reunification of the family, that perhaps it is a point at which they can put aside their differences and forge a new way forward. But we were just talking before we came on air about our own recollections, and like you said before, it's very personal because it does remind people of their own grandmothers, their own mothers, and this is somebody who looms large. I'm sure everybody at some stages had a dream about the Queen. It's very personal, and she's part of our lives in a very real way. Yes, okay, many of us never met her, but that's not to say that she doesn't still loom large in our personal life. And I was just sharing with Richard before we came on an anecdote about having been very lucky to have met the Queen on a couple of occasions, and one was in the run-up to the Diamond Jubilee. And I said to her, what do you say to the Queen? And I said, well, I've met with Lord Salisbury, and he's very excited about putting together the river pageant. Do you remember that wonderful kind of river pageant? The weather wasn't great, but it was a fantastic display of all the boats along the Thames. And she said, oh, yes, I know, he's getting quite worked up about it, and had a real giggle. And there was just this sense of kind of mischievousness about her. I mean, just warmth and such humour, and that's that always shone through. We may not have always known what the Queen thought about things politically, but we knew. I think we all had a really good sense of her personality and how much she cared.
Yeah.
Now, I understand. Let's think about what might be the next steps in the next few days. Kate, I understand we are expecting Charles to greet mourners from now.
Yeah, so today we're going to see King Charles III.
Isn't it weird? I mean,
which I had to take a pause then because it's still strange to say it. But it will become normal and natural, and they've been planning this transition for a long time. So, as we know, in February, the Queen, on her accession day, said that it was her sincere wish that Camilla should be known as Queen Consort when the time comes. So these little kind of points along the way have been preparing us for this moment, but nothing truly prepares you because it's still a shock, even though, yes, she was 96. Yes, we know that she'd had mobility issues and had some ill health, but it's still strange when it happens. So we're going to see King Charles greeting mourners, having a look through some of the floral tributes, and then tomorrow will be tomorrow, Saturday, will be the accession day. I'm still confused because I keep thinking Palace is on a Thursday, but obviously it's Friday today.
It's a special one.
So tomorrow will be the accession day, when we'll have the kind of first big ceremony of Charles as king at St James's Palace. And I think that's going to be a real moment, and important that we see this in action, and everyone can kind of come to terms with the fact that we have a new monarch on the throne.
Isn't it? It's extraordinary. Richard, what do you think Charles... What will be the tone, do you think, that he'll be setting? Do you think he will see it from now as really needing to lead on the kind of monarchy that his will be?
Imagine having your big new job. You're starting that job at the same time as you're dealing with the loss of your mother. That's what a king faces, and it must be horrendous. He will have, for many years, he will have thought about what will happen in these moments and what he'll do. But then going through with it will be a real challenge. And remember, the royal family were criticised so much after the death of Princess Diana, how they handled that and the various sort of missteps. I
think that was a much more extraordinary situation than the natural end of a life.
Because of the shock and the surprise and everything happening so suddenly. But it's similar in the sense that Charles will not want to put a foot wrong, and he'll want to show that he's, sure-footed as a king. And it will be very interesting to watch him as he goes on.
What sort of other preparations do you think we'll start to see that have been put in place?
So tomorrow, by the end of tomorrow, we're going to have a better understanding of the next few days coming forward, so leading up to the funeral. We're going to have some details coming late tomorrow about how the coffin will travel down, lying in state, and that will all become clear. But it's a process over the next week. We're going to be seeing all the preparations for the funeral, which we expect to take place a week on Monday. That'll all be confirmed tomorrow. Yeah.
I can imagine, do you think that the palace, even though obviously they prep for these things for many years, that the fact that we saw a picture of the Queen this week, in the week that she also passed away, it must be a massive shock internally as well. It must be. I
think to those on the inside, they've known they were reaching the end, but the Queen's incredible kind of strength throughout, to the fact that we saw her 2 days before she died. It still comes as a shock, even though everyone knew it was coming, and I think it's hard to believe.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, a source said to me today that those meetings that the Queen held on Tuesday were particularly remarkable because she was in an awful lot of pain, and people around her couldn't believe that she could go ahead with that, but she did, and put a smiling face, as we've seen from those pictures, her delight at meeting Liz Truss, and I'm sure the new Prime Minister will be very grateful for having had the chance to meet her.
Gosh, anyway, well, let's move on for a minute, because yesterday was an extraordinary day for so many, and the Daily Mail's royal editor, Rebecca English, has been telling us about reporting on the death of the Queen.
I mean, it was the most extraordinary working day of my career. I mean, I've never been in the offices of the Daily Mail before, writing to deadline with tears pouring down my face and dropping onto my keyboard. And you're very professional about these things, but, you know, the Queen is such a huge figure in all of our lives, and she's someone I've worked alongside for 17 years, following her engagements, writing about her, occasionally being lucky enough to get the chance to talk to her. So I think as journalists, we felt like we've lost someone as well. I have to say, although the palace statement on Wednesday night was that she was advised to rest, she hadn't need to go to hospital, there was no need for alarm, we started getting the warning flags fairly early yesterday morning that her condition had seriously worsened and that the family were being called up to Balmoral to be with her. And I obviously hit the phone straight away, calling the palace, calling contacts, seeing what I could find out, just to be able to give us a head start on the story. And I knew when not a single member of the palace answered their phones that something was seriously amiss. It's little things like that in this business that are the giveaway. Eventually I did speak to a contact who confirmed to me that the situation was very grave. And I think about an hour and a half later the statement came out. I immediately, obviously, as journalists, you kick into let's just, you know, get this and do her proud, cover the story in the best way that we can. But obviously, things were changing thick and fast during the day, so it was a very late night. But hopefully, say the product speaks for itself today. It was a really fast-moving situation yesterday. I mean, it was not until 10 to 7 in the morning that the Queen's flight, that burgundy liveried helicopter of hers, was scrambled from Windsor via Carlisle, where it refuelled, up to Dumfries House to pick up the Prince of Wales. He made it to Balmoral at 10:27 in the morning, so he was with his mother, fortunately, during the course of the morning and when she passed away, as was Princess Anne, who was already in Scotland undertaking engagements. The Duchess of Cornwall was at Birk Hall, so she joined her husband for support. But it shows you how quickly things, I think her condition had deteriorated overnight, that it wasn't till yesterday morning that they realised they needed to get the family there as quick as possible. But the royal household is a very well-oiled machine, so when they need to do these things quickly, they can. A flight was scrambled also to bring other members of the family, the Queen's remaining children, the Duke of York, the Earl of Wessex, and also her grandson, Prince William, up to Scotland, but sadly it didn't get there in time for to see her before she died. But as someone said to me the other day, you know, they are, despite all the trials and tribulations of the last few years, they are a very close family. And I feel that people I've spoken to have said to me that there was nothing left unsaid. And I think not all of us can say that when it comes to our families, but when it comes to their family, you know, the Queen knew how much she was loved and respected, and they'd had the conversations with her that they needed to have.
Rebecca English there. Kate, sometimes journalists aren't so fond of the public figures that they are paid to follow around, but it seems like everybody in the Royal Rota did have affection for the Queen. Yeah,
it's true. You know, we're journalists and we remain as objective, you know, as it's possible to be. And you do have a lot of time, you know, with these people, looking at them close quarters. But it's just hard, and I'm not just saying this because we're sitting here today remembering her life, but it's hard to think of anybody who had any bad word to say about her, and that includes staff as well. So people within the palace, you know, she commanded huge respect because she was so thoughtful, because she was kind, and because you could see at close quarters, just, we're talking about that last engagement, you know, and how much inner strength she must have had if she was in such pain to go through with it. But we saw that all the way through, you know, the strength that she had and that commitment to duty. It's pretty inspiring.
Do you feel sort of privileged, special, or just thrilled that you've had that sort of a memory with her? Do you have any pictures of her with you?
I feel really very, very privileged to have had that experience, and so few people will have done so. And she did, you know, when she walked into a room, you just, there's a sense of, a brilliant kind of sense of, you know, just being in the presence of somebody extremely special. And it sounds so silly to say it, but it was an atmosphere that completely changed when she walked into a room. And one of my favourite things to do actually on engagements was to look at her with her back towards you and just look as she was meeting people along the line and just see their little faces light up like light bulbs. And it was just incredible to see the effect that she had on people in a room. And not that long ago, a couple of years ago, I went to see her when she went to board HMS Queen Elizabeth, this brilliant kind of Royal Navy ship, and she came down with these fighter jets on this huge lift, and there was little Queen in this brilliant kind of red jacket and coat and hat amongst these fighter jets, and all the, you know, these big kind of roughy-tufty Royal Navy guys just kind of melted, you know, so pleased and so privileged that she'd come to witness some of the work that they were doing. And that's what I loved, that she had that effect on people. And it was just, and it was, you know, everybody, you know, every walk of life, she just...
I mean, Richard, talk about extreme duty and obligation. She even met diary editors like yourself.
on rare occasions. I mean, I think lots of people have a view of the Queen that they sort of imagine her to be very serious, very solemn, because she had obviously that side to her character and the duties she carried out. But she also did love a party. And one of her greatest friends and confidants was Lady Elizabeth Anson, who died not so long ago. She was her cousin who organised parties, and she organised lots for the Queen. And I remember going to one of them, and it happened, it was after the day the Queen had been to the Chelsea Flower Show. Now, we all presumed, this was only about 10 years ago, so the Queen was in her mid-80s.
Yeah.
We all presumed, no way would she come after walking around Chelsea Flower Show for quite a long time. But it got to about 7 o'clock or so, and she turned up. And this was a party at the Goring Hotel in just not far from Buckingham Palace. And she was talking to everyone, and she didn't seem to be doing it out of a sense of duty at all. She was really enjoying it, talking to everyone at this party, lighting up, as Kate said. But the funniest thing was, she didn't want to go home. I'd been at this party myself for ages and wanted to go home. I got a few stories. I couldn't leave before the Queen, can you imagine? So I was sort of hanging on until this party is pretty much over.
Like 5 in the morning.
Before we left. But that was in her mid-80s. So, yeah, that was a real good sign to her character, I think.
You heard it here first. That is all we have time for on Palace Confidential today. As the nation enters a period of mourning, join us again on Monday for another special edition of the programme. Goodbye.